All righty. My clock says we have reached 12 o'clock, and it is time to get this crisis jam started. So I'd like to say good day to everyone who has joined us. I'm Dr. Brian Sims with NASPID, Senior Medical Advisor, and I am so pleased to be your host today for this crisis jam learning community. It's an exciting time and an exciting topic. So I am definitely excited to at least present this to you all, because today we're going to be doing things just a tad bit different in terms of when the presentation, because normally we would have it early in the presentation, but we're going to be doing a little bit of cleaning beforehand, and you'll see the reason why, because we're going to be discussing a day in the life of the mobile crisis teams. And I'm really excited about this particular piece happening. So welcome to everyone who's chosen to join us. And if you will move to the next slide, please. This is a reminder slide, and it's a slide filled with lots of information. And I just want to make you all aware of a couple of things here. Is the ever-growing number of people who are involved now in this community, as you see highlighted in pink or red or whichever color you see there, but also under it, acknowledging that we have an ever-increasing group of lived experience individuals that are joining us in this as well. And we're so pleased to have them on board with us. But in addition, not only to the continental US, but also internationally, we have representatives on the line, and as well the territories. So we have Guam available with us as well. So it is really an expanding group and a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to be able to see how things are really moving forward with this 988 legislation and the embracing that people have of the crisis now model. Next slide, please. This slide is kind of a reminder for each and every one of us. We put this on every single week just to get you accustomed to the fact that there's a lot of information that is available for you on the Crisis Talk line. It's talk.crisisnow.com. And as you enter into the site, it's filled with a lot of material that can be helpful for you going backwards or forward. So if you have the opportunity or unfortunately had to miss a particular session or otherwise, you can always come to the site area and view any past crisis jams. You can also download material here. But if you have any issues or if you haven't signed up for it, we even have a spot here for you to sign up. If you have any difficulties or any questions, then clearly we highlight, get in touch with Karen, and Karen will definitely facilitate your change. Also within this, we're looking at slides that have taken place in previous sessions. And this slide is particularly important because as we continue, it kind of links with our topic that we're going to be talking about today. Now, before the Thanksgiving holiday, which I hope everyone had a wonderful one, we were talking about a time for dedicated behavioral health response. And we thought we'd continue that theme as we go into today, and I'll give you more information on that as we progress. Next slide, please. At this point, I'm going to call on our Crisis Talk Editor-in-Chief, Stephanie Hepburn, to talk to us a little bit about an interview she recently had with Dr. Dia Gaynor, the Executive Director of the National Association of State EMS Officials. So Stephanie, if you would. Hi there.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, can hear you well.
So yeah, so this week, unfortunately, Dia is at a conference, so she's not able to join us. But what we talked about was, and I would love to hear in the chat if some communities are already integrating the NEMSIS data, but that's what we talked about, was NEMSIS, which is EMS's national database. And what she was discussing is that what she's heard and from her knowledge, there hasn't been a lot of incorporation of the NEMSIS data. But what's interesting about it is it's done at a local level and a national level. So communities, regions, states can tap into this information in real time, essentially what they call activation. So if an EMS team goes out to meet somebody, once the EMT has closed out that case, it's actually in the database within 7 minutes. So it truly is information that we should tap into. And the 2020 data isn't yet released publicly, but she did send it to me. And I went through and categorized, and there's some, one of the challenges is some of the information and some of the coding is a bit ambiguous, because if somebody goes out, if an EMT goes out on a case and the person's already in crisis, they might not know, for example, if they're in a substance use crisis, they might not know what the person took. So there's some ambiguity there. I looked at the data that was really clear and put that together, and I came up with 12% of activations from 2020 were behavioral health. Now there's a bunch of area that's gray. I did not include that in that figure. It would really take somebody, on the partnership level at the community, state, regional level to look at what's happening in their area. But the discussion was really about how can we use this data? We were talking a lot about 988, potential for diversion, what that would look like. And it seems like this is a database that we should be tapping into.
Wow. That is phenomenal, Stephanie. Thank you so much for that. I'm sorry we didn't have Dia for us to talk to today.
Yeah, I think her point is we should use this database, and there really needs to be robust partnership with EMS. That's the main takeaway message.
And it has so much of a linkage to what we will be talking about today. So that is really good information for us to have connected. So thank you so much, Steph.
Thank you.
All righty. Let's go on with our next slide, please. We are ready now, actually, as a kind of a change from last time. We're going to talk a little bit on the Crisis Trivia Hot Seat today. And I want to, first of all, give a shout out of thanks to Margie Balfour for stepping up to the plate at the last minute to be the person that we will pose the question to. So Margie, are you on?
I am here.
Okay, and I can see the enthusiasm on your face on this one. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for participating in this.
These questions are hard.
Okay, we'll work with you on this, just like a regular game show. So we're going to treat it as the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire kind of format. So Margie, here's what we're going to do. We're going to help you out a little bit here.
Okay.
This first slide actually is more of a reminder of the theme of what we're talking about. This isn't really the question, but as we go into it, you notice the last time that we had a discussion, we talked about emergency first aid and medical care and gave this as a reference point to how the system has been responding in the past and how it's created our shortfall of crisis call hubs and mobile teams and crisis receiving facilities. And that's given the challenges that we've had all along in terms of making this crisis intervention piece really a mainstay in what we're able to do. So next slide, please. So what we want to do today is pose the question to you, Margie. And in this question, as we read through it, you have several options. You can, of course, as you would, answer the question. You can, if you wish, phone a friend. We would ask that you not use any officials from the Arizona component, obviously, or you could just ask the audience in the same light not to get answers from anyone who is working within the Arizona system. So let's take a look at it. In the special edition Nashville September 15th Crisis Jam, okay? Teros's David Oberfeld and Maricopa County, Arizona providers had reported 18% of mobile crisis referrals originate with police. So for the 82% that originated within the community, what percentage required law enforcement to join on to the scene?
Well, I'm going to guess that it's not much. So 10%.
Okay. Now, is that your guess, or you would like to go with phone a friend or ask the audience?
Well, the audience is all saying lower.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think I'm going to go. Let's see, we got less than 1%, 3, 6, 3, 3, 5. let's say 4%.
4%. Okay. Is that your final answer?
That is my final answer.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's take a look at the answer. The answer is
Oh,
3%.
Suzanne Rabideau like quoted it like verbatim. Less than 3%.
I saw that and saw a lot of folks who hovered right around 3%. So maybe this week it wasn't as difficult a question or a tougher question as before. But that means that, again, that last sentence has so much power to it. It means that of the over 22,000 community-based requests for the crisis interventions, fewer than 700 of them required police engagement. That's really a move in the right direction as we take a look at the efforts that we're going through and what we really have. I just wondered at this point if there are any thoughts from anyone or any comments with regards to this. And if not, I will certainly continue to move on. Marty, thank you so much for cooperating with us, and job well done. So Karen's going to take care of sending you the award that you get for responding to the question. Thanks. And next slide, please. Now, this particular slide, I was just very quickly, just wanted to read through the slide. A flock of geese doesn't respond to the call, but to the flight. And it was one of those ones where you have to kind of dig deep inside. So for the sake of time, I just wanted to point out that the quote in this is really referring to the geese taking off, and that the honking is not what gets them going, but it's about someone that prompts the flock to follow them. And I think as we take a look now at crisis intervention and crisis services, it's really that it's more about highlighting to give honor to all of those who have been in the field of primary response as crisis responders for years now, and how positive that has been and how embracing and making a change it has in the system. So we really want to just kind of pull that quote together to say that this isn't the crisis intervention status was not something that was created last night or the last month, but we have seen many states and many organizations have seen the benefit of actually having this type of intervention. So next slide, please. So at this point, I think we're ready to move into our featured presentation for today. And I'd like to introduce to you Erica Chestnut Ramirez with Impact and Sue Ann O'Brien with Behavioral Health Link. And I'm just going to turn it over to them and they can take it from here. So enjoy.
Great. Thanks so much, Brian. And we are, Eric and I are happy to be facilitating a roundtable discussion today about our featured presentation, which is a day in the life of mobile crisis teams. We do have a new video that is posted, and I think some of those links might be shared later, but under Hope Inc. Stories on YouTube. If you haven't checked it out, it is posted there. It's called A Day in the Life, Mobile Crisis Teams. And today, oh, thanks, Rin. She just posted that in the chat. If you haven't checked it out, please do. It's an amazing video and highlights just a fraction. There's so much good work going on all over the country with mobile crisis teams. And the video just highlights a fraction of that work. We are fortunate today that we have a few people that have been featured in that video joining us today. We have Matt Larson from La Frontera, works for Erica in Maricopa County, Arizona. We also have Megan Gillis and Jasmine Hutchinson from Behavioral Health Link here in Georgia. Are you guys all on?
Hello, this is Matt. Yeah, I am.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for joining today. Do we have Megan and Jasmine?
I am right here. This is Megan.
Hi, Megan.
Hi, I'm here as well. It's Jasmine.
Thanks, Jasmine. You guys, Matt and Jasmine, you guys both did an amazing job in the video. So we're just going to facilitate a conversation. We're eager to hear from all of you about what it looks like for you. Talk a little bit about your experience working in mobile crisis, and I'm going to hand it over to Erica to get us started.
Thank you, Sue Ann, and thanks to everybody for joining today, and a special thanks to Matt and Jasmine as well. We appreciate you. And I'm just gonna throw just a basic question out. Jasmine, if you want, we could start with you. You did a great job in the video, and I just want to say thank you for all of your work. So you guys are the geese. You guys are already flying, right? And you are actually doing this work, and we're hoping that other, communities and states are going to be taking off with you. So thanks for setting that great example. So Jasmine, could you just talk a little bit about what a typical day looks like for you? How do you get dispatches, and what does that look like going into the community, meeting with folks versus, going to the ED, et cetera?
Absolutely. A typical day starts with just being prepared. We are dispatched on our mobile phones, our work phones, and we have a set shift. So we'll start our day making sure we check the board, making sure we are following the guidelines put before us. So we're checking the board. We are, once we are dispatched, we go out as a team. So it's always 2 people. Safety is a highlight, a priority. So we go out together. We're making sure that we are vigilant when we're out in the community. We're looking around. We're trained also with CPR, CPI, first aid. We are just prompted to make sure that we're considering all different factors before we're getting to a dispatch. And then once we're on dispatch, once we're on scene, we are really engaging with the consumer, trying to connect with them, making sure that we are letting them, it's a really consumer-driven decision-making process. So we are letting them make the decisions for themselves, but we're just there to support them in whatever way we can.
That's great, Jasmine. Thank you so much. Megan, do you have anything more to add to what Jasmine said related to her typical day?
I do not. As a clinician, we have a little bit more that we have to be prepared with. So we actually have our laptops and download our assessments and make sure that we do have everything prepared. We have an understanding of what we're, a brief synopsis of what we're walking into. If we need support or need to contact law enforcement. But as a clinician and as a team, we really focus on communication and how we connect together. We meet up at a safe location before we head to the scene itself to make sure that we are on the same page, because as safety is that priority, we have to be able to talk and communicate, and actually communicate via body language as well.
Great, thank you, Megan. Matt, from your perspective, how does it differ, or how is it the same related to the way that BHL dispatches and what their calls kind of look like during the day?
Sounds very similar. Our calls are coming into Solari, which was formerly the Crisis Response Network, and then they dispatch us also out to the community. I think one of the benefits of going out to the community also is that a lot of the people that we see are low income, and a lot of them don't have transport. So being able to meet them where they're at their home is helpful for them. And sometimes we can even go above and beyond and assist them with like taking them to get a prescription or something else. And it also makes it easier to involve their supports, which is important when it comes to safety issues. You kind of have to make sure that there's a supportive person, but then if you're in their home, sometimes people are living with family members like their parents or someone else. And so we can say, hey, why don't we bring your parent into this? Or why don't we bring, your uncle or so-and-so, just to help keep an eye on you. So it is helpful to be able to engage supports when you're out in the community as well.
Yeah, that's great. That sounds like a really inclusive process in terms of being able to access natural supports for people in the community to help keep them safe. That's great. So there was a question, well, I guess when in the hot seat, related to law enforcement's engagement, especially in Maricopa County. Less than 3% of mobile teams calling law enforcement. Can you talk, Matt, I'll start with you on this one, a little bit about how you coordinate with law enforcement when it is required, and actually when they call for a mobile team, which is almost 20% of the time, 18 to 20% of the time, they're actually calling for a mobile team. How are you coordinating with that?
It's kind of a handoff process. So if the police are requesting us, then when we arrive on scene, we verbally coordinate with them and get the info. We tend to get very limited info initially from Solari because we try to get out to police quickest to help alleviate the pressure that they have, free them up for helping other people. So we get the remainder of the info from them verbally. And then if it's them requesting us, it's kind of like our show at that point. We kind of take over. And a lot of times they're able to leave if the situation is safe. If we are concerned for our safety of us or the client, then we will coordinate with police. Usually we won't have to use 911. We'll typically just call the non-emergent line. And then it's kind of the reverse situation. We're sort of handing it off to them. It's their show, and we coordinate, let them know what's going on, and we let them do their thing until the situation is safe, and then we can take over. So it's kind of like a handoff.
That's great. That's a great way to describe it, Matt. Thank you. Jasmine and Megan, do you have anything more to offer related to coordination with law enforcement?
He pretty much summed it up very well. The majority of our calls, the calls that I go on, do not seem to involve law enforcement. When they do, it looks a lot like what Matt said. It's communicating with the police first to exchange information. Oftentimes when we're on scene, we'll have them there initially, and then we'll ask them, you know, once we realize or kind of gauge the situation, we'll let them go ahead and leave. And if the situation escalates, then it does kind of become more their show. But when they're just there to secure the scene for us for the most part.
Great. Thank you. Megan, anything else from your side?
No, exactly what Jasmine said. I think the main focus of what we look at when we work with law enforcement is that initial introduction and collaboration. So how we speak to each other with a common language, and kind of get on that same page. Introduction, how can we help people, explaining why we were called out to the house initially or the location, and what our purpose is. So really explaining to them so they can understand how we all want to work together.
Very good. Thank you. Sue Ann, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Just when I watched the video a few times, and both of you said a lot of really compelling things about the way that you do your work. Matt, the thing that stood out for me that you said was about, prior to having robust mobile crisis systems, people just had one option, and that was to go to the hospital. And your counterpart in the video even said, previously I had to wait for clients to come to me to seek me out in the office, and now I have a job where I go to them. Jasmine said something similar about, I think you called it, Jasmine, just general human problems that we all face, like the stressors of life that we all face. And, oftentimes those stressors just take over one's natural coping mechanisms. And you saw yourself as having a role of going out into the community and really sort of helping folks relax and get some support wherever they are, on the street, in the community, in their homes, and really normalizing that a little bit. And it just, both of these comments really spoke to me, Matt, more like on the, perhaps the resource availability side, but also the stigma that's attached with going to the hospital, not to mention the cost of that, and also oftentimes a re-traumatization for some folks that have had bad experiences previously. But just Jasmine, both of you spoke a lot about just humanizing this service and removing stigma from this service. And I wonder if you might just say a few words about that from your perspective. And Jasmine, let's start with you.
Removing the stigma. I really guess it's about finding that element that you can connect with the consumer on, and really diving into that, helping them to feel comfortable, helping them to feel like it's okay to not be okay, and to seek some help and to need some support. And that's what we're here to give you. And whatever that looks like, if that looks like looking up some information with you, finding some resources in the community with you, just brainstorming your own coping skills that you already have or that you maybe not utilized in a while, And just pulling back into that, it's okay, it's normal. This is just that normalization piece. So it looks small, but it really helps. It helps.
Thanks. Matt?
Yeah, I think that as mobile teams, a lot of times we are people's first experience with behavioral health services. They've never done anything like that, and there is still an ongoing stigma about it. So it's helpful to be able to break down those barriers for people. One thing that my partner and I will often mention to people, especially kids, is that this is not counseling. We kind of have to jump right into things, especially if safety is a concern. And that's actually what a lot of kids are afraid of. They don't want to share very personal stuff with two strangers. So we have to try to break down that barrier and remind them, like, counseling, if you do try it, it goes at your own pace. We have to jump right in. But counseling, normally you're going to get to know someone, you're going to build rapport, you're just going to talk about some real light stuff. And then if you choose to, you can get into more personal stuff at your own pace and you can take charge of it. So we try to break down those barriers that they have about behavioral services ahead of time. And a lot of times we have completely changed someone's mind about them and gotten them on board, like a teenager that didn't want to go to counseling, absolutely resistant to it, gotten them to change their mind and agree to go, so that's helpful to be someone's first contact. And they kind of feel like, oh, it's not so bad. Behavioral services aren't so bad.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. In the interest of time, Erica, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask or hear from our panelists?
I think you got it. I was more going to ask about, like, what does success look like for the panelists? What does a successful intervention really look like? And I guess we have a few minutes, so maybe
we do.
Yeah. So maybe what does success look like for you, Jasmine?
Success for me, when we're out on the calls, would look like that breakthrough moment when someone says, yes, I'm going to go to counseling. Yes, thank you. Like, just them telling us, reassuring us that our presence made a difference. It looks like sometimes the hug between a parent and a child at the end of a session, and just seeing that we've made a small change in whatever was bothering them in the moment. It looks basically like that for me.
That's amazing. That's so sweet. I kind of brought a tear to my eye. That because that is what mobile crisis. I mean, I've been on mobile crisis calls, for years, and it truly is. Seeing that between family members that were having difficulty communicating and just being that little nugget to help them would definitely be an example of success. Thank you for sharing that. Megan or Matt, you can jump in if you have. What does success look like for you on mobile crisis?
For me, an affect change is often something that you'll see. Their affect is usually really low, very hopeless, despairing, despondent. And then as the intervention goes on, a lot of times you will notice their affect brighten. And that's really nice to see. One little thing that I've noticed is that a lot of times people will all of a sudden start being concerned about their appearance or their home, be like, oh my goodness, I'm such a mess. I'm so sorry, my home is such a mess. And it's actually really inspiring to see, because they were so worried and perseverating on their crisis and the stress that was something that wasn't even entering their head. And so it's actually a good sign when they actually start caring about that. And you can actually sometimes see that transition right in the middle of the intervention. And then like the other person had mentioned, getting someone connected to services and getting them on board, just on the path towards feeling better. It's just really positive. That feels like a success to me.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Matt. I think we're pretty close to time, Sue Ann.
Yep. Sounds great. I want to thank our panelists. We did have tons of really great questions in the chat. Karen, I'm not sure how we want to handle that, maybe at a future or a follow-up communication, but there was some good stuff in there that I saw come up, but want to make sure we can stay on schedule today. Special thanks to Megan, Jasmine, and Matt for joining us on our roundtable. And as I said, if you haven't checked out the video, the link's in the chat. It's really worth a watch. Thank you all.
Certainly want to thank you all from us. Incredible discussion. Sorry that we had limited it to that amount of time, because based on the questions that you see in the chat box, there is so much that people really want to know more and drilling down on the details. I think one of the things, if I had to carry away from this, was all of the parallels of connection, which I really think is can help to answer a lot of the questions about what happens when you go into an area that you're not familiar with and you're seeing people that aren't comfortable with you. It's about connection, and it just made me smile and really feel good about the fact that connection was made such a high point from the speakers there. So thank you all for that wonderful, wonderful discussion. What I'd like to do now is turn it over to our roundtable discussants. And today we have with us Dana Flannery from the Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System, or ACCESS, and Debbie Atkins from the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. So if you guys are on, please come on board and go ahead with the discussion.
Sure. Debbie, happy if you wanted to kick it off.
Sure, Dana. So we weren't really told what, but we're going to discuss kind of what you heard. First of all, I want to answer one of the questions. I think that's one of the bigger things that 988 is having to address, and that is law enforcement does go out in 5 minutes or less, and mobile crisis doesn't. So that's one thing I think every state's having to look at. How do we market it? How do we make sure the public understands this is not emergency medical services, but they are first responders? And so I think that's a challenge that every team is looking at, is how to make sure that people understand the true role of mobile crisis and to really make sure the value is communicated, even though they're not going to be out there in 5 minutes or less. So that communication. A lot of training was discussed. Safety, de-escalation, recovery principles are key. If you can't go out and instill hope, you're really just going to move people into facilities. That's so vital. Engagement. I used to work in-home therapy, and I see mobile crisis is probably one of the most vital things ever. It takes barriers away. It sees people in their own environment, so they're more relaxed. You see someone in an emergency room with all the lights and all the professionals, things really do look different in that person's eyes. So being able to see them in their natural environment is just key. So for us, mobile crisis is one of the most key things, besides answering the call, that we've got to make sure that we have capacity for as we roll out 988. Dana, what do you want to add?
Sure. And I apologize. I missed the earlier conversation. I was just able to hop on right now for this roundtable. But really, we had a great stakeholder engagement yesterday talking about the crisis system at large. And it was very interesting that a lot of our providers that were there were really speaking to crisis as defined by the individual. And really that guarantee of if they wanted a mobile team, they would get a mobile team. And so for a lot of individuals, the feedback was, I don't want to call just a phone line. The phone line is a conduit for me to get someone here in person in, like you said, Debbie, my natural environment and what's going on with me. And so that was loud and clear feedback that we received, is that that's what really works well, is that when they know that that phone line is actually going to connect them to something else versus just be the phone line. So being really cognizant as we're doing the rollout of 988 and we're talking about all of these phone access, that is to access something else possibly. And so if you have that mobile crisis, that really helps people understand they're not necessarily just calling to talk to someone on the phone. If they need someone there in person, that's really important. Hopefully you guys talked about some opportunities for Medicaid to really play a part in the mobile teams. A lot of the people that use our mobile crisis team services are in fact on Medicaid. And so really being able to leverage that opportunity for funding, in addition to state and grant funds that you may have that help for mobile crisis. And obviously, hopefully you've talked about peer utilization in mobile crisis. And I think as we look down the road at opportunities through American Rescue Plan Act for mobile crisis and other things, it still is very important to be cognizant of our very rural and frontier areas and how mobile crisis looks there. And so as we look for equity for all of our members and the services they receive, also being very cognizant of the different areas. For example, Arizona has a big canyon that you can only get down by mule or helicopter. And so again, just really thinking about what mobile crisis looks like in your state, how to best execute that. And then really, again, mobile crisis is another conduit to possibly go to a crisis stabilization unit or an inpatient or a crisis respite, et cetera. So really thinking about it as always on a continuum.
Absolutely. Good points, Dana. Can't say enough about the peer workforce in mobile crisis as well, and just how much that makes a difference to have someone with lived experience available to individuals. It not only instills hope, but it de-escalates a situation so much quicker. Funding, absolutely. Whether it is Medicaid, public, private, depending on if your state's an expansion state, but really looking at all options. And then how will technology play a part? If you have frontier lands that you can't get to in an hour or less, how can you initiate telehealth to start while someone is making their way to someone? What are the different opportunities? So every state is going to have to approach it a little bit different. It's going to have to look right for what's in your state.
Yeah. And thank you, Dr. Balfour, for noting the interesting point that was noted on our stakeholder call. Again, we're in our 988 planning phase and lots of great stakeholder turnout. And so she noted that in Southern Arizona, 80% of the calls are resolved on phone, but the calls diverted to the crisis line from 911, it's more like 50%. So I think that's another great point to make for mobile crisis, is that interface and that intersection with 988, 911, your local crisis numbers and what that looks like.
I can't tell you how incredible this presentation has been. Just for the period of time that you had and the volume of material that comes out. You can see in the chat box that there are a number of really positive comments and people that really would love to have more information than what you were able to provide. But we certainly want to thank all of you for this presentation today. And let's move ahead as we look at how to implement this the right way and look at some of the tools that you guys have already established as a framework to help us to begin to move in the proper direction to help engage the people that really are in need of our services. So we want to thank you all again for everything that you do and wish you all the best, and thanks for this presentation that you've given us today. All righty, well, let's go ahead and move into our agenda. We'll start with our updates. And we'll begin with SAMHSA, and I believe we have James Wright available for us for a SAMHSA update. Wright, are you available, sir?
I am. Good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending upon where you are. So a couple quick updates here. We have recently expanded our team, and I don't know if everyone's aware of who's working on the SAMHSA 988 team as a whole, but many of these names may be familiar to you. So I wanted to take a moment today and to share kind of the core team that we have. We've recently been joined by Charlie Smith, who's one of our senior advisors to the 988 team and our regional administrator, and Amy Behrens, who is coming over to help us with data planning and evaluation. So very excited to have them, and hopefully you'll see quite a few names that you are familiar with. So this team is growing because we're all growing in the 988 continuum, and look forward to discussions with each and every one of them as well. So next slide. I believe this has been briefly shared, but I wanted to give an update on our goals for 988 and our core pillars we're identifying. So really the two critical goals are strengthen and enhance the Lifeline network as a whole for 988, and then transform and strengthen this broader crisis care continuum. We have talked about this, I've heard it today, the discussion about the importance of local-based services and ensuring timely response, and that is critical in a truly strengthened crisis care continuum. So couple pillars we are identifying, and there are quite a few different activities under each of these pillars, but wanted to go through them briefly. Federal planning and convening. This is how we are securing federal funding, leadership, and policy, strengthening both of these two core goals. One of the immediate most critical, in my opinion, is the readiness of the network, looking at the July 16, 2022, and one that I am diligently focused on, ensuring the Lifeline network is equipped to respond to our contacts, Messaging and public communication is absolutely critical, as it's been highlighted by several members throughout discussions. How do we stay in line and ensure that we have appropriate messaging around 988 and how that aligns with the federal and the broader public view of when and how to use 988 versus other services. And then finally, again, that foundation for that more comprehensive crisis services. So are we building those blocks in place to ensure that we can continue expanding the crisis system that, again, provides direct life-saving services to all in need, which you've been talking about since we've been on this call? What are the critical components of mobile crisis outreach? We also know there are steps for respite residential care and other services that really build upon those crisis-based services. So we're very excited to move these forward, and definitely know that we'll be bringing more discussion based off of each of these. I also wanted to take just a quick second to note that we announced that there was the funding that was available for Vibrant, and then upcoming funding for the states to get to crisis centers. That we are diligently working on that, we're hoping to get that out notice at the end of November, as we identified on the last call, and we are working diligently to get that out quickly. So there should be more to come on that shortly. And with that, that's the SAMHSA update.
All righty, thank you, James. And were there anyone else from SAMHSA that you would like to have a comment or otherwise?
Is anyone else on? I know there are quite a few people on today. So if there's any other, I see Charlie Smith, he is on and has been heading up again those state readiness reviews. If there's anything from you or anybody else from SAMHSA on, please don't hesitate to provide an additional update.
Hey, this is Richard McCann. I'll be really quick because I just arrived in Los Angeles and I've got a lot of ambient noise at the airport. But I would just mention that, we are one of the areas we're also working on intently is coordination between 988 and 911. Yesterday, James and I were in Houston visiting the Harris Center's co-location there, and in their 911 PSAP for the city of Houston. And today I'm in Los Angeles to examine the work that Dee Dee Hirsch has been doing with the LAPD and PSAPs in Los Angeles. There is also an upcoming SAMHSA's funded Vibrant to do a community of learning on 988 911 coordination. So there'll be more to come on this very important topic. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. McCann. Do you have anyone else from SAMHSA? If not, we certainly want to thank SAMHSA as usual for your leadership in all of this. And there are a number of questions that have been posed, but I think what you've said already is that more information is to come. So we'll be looking forward to further details on what you spoke of. But thank you all again.
Yeah, Brian, real fast, I'll try to respond to a couple in the text there, but one of them I think is pretty critical. And we have Kate Galatas, who I forwarded the invite. I don't know if she's on, but really is our communications lead. So again, going back, a question about how can this be coordinated is something we are diligently working on. I know that states are moving forward. As it's been highlighted, I think it's going to be critical to making sure they're aligned. One of the reasons is to make sure that we have individual access and it is activated everywhere nationwide while we are working on this marketing. So hopefully more to come very quickly. I know the Action Alliance is working on that, looking at what messaging needs are from communities and states. And we are diligently as well. So hopefully we'll be able to provide some clarification on an upcoming crisis jam in the near future. And Kate, if you're on, I'm pinging you for that early. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, James. Anything else, sir? All righty. Well, then we'll move now to our NASHBIT update. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Hepburn.
Thank you, Dr. Sims, and thank you for the work you're doing today on the jam. And also thank you, James, and Richard for talking about the SAMHSA leadership, which they're doing such a great job of. So thank you. Let me bring in Megan Hope. Megan?
Thank you so much, Brian. I just wanted folks to know we've had past presentations on bringing in the deaf community in terms of planning for 988, and NASHBID has been gathering the state deaf mental health coordinators to develop recommendations for implementing 988 for people who are deaf and hard of hearing and deaf blind. And we're really excited about this, and we're on that train. So we're very excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Next slide. So I just wanted to bring your attention to the Crisis Now library. These are papers that NASHBID has put together over the last 5 years. And I think they would be very helpful to you. One of the papers is in the 2020 series, and it's a paper that was done by Margie Balfour, and it's called Cops, Clinicians, or Both: Collaborative Approaches to Responding to Behavioral Health Emergencies. This is a really nice paper that Margie put together in 2020. And it was actually used for a psychiatric services paper that was released recently. But if you want to get the original, it's in that 2020 series. Also, I wanted to bring your attention to the 2021 series. And when you go to the Crisis Now library, if you just click on any of these icons, it will take you to where the papers are. But in the 2021 series, there was also a paper on law enforcement, and this was done by Dr. Deborah Peinels, Law Enforcement and Crisis Services, Past Lessons for New Partnerships and the Future of 988. So I think both papers are excellent, and I would encourage you to go to the crisisnow.com library and take a look at these papers. So thank you very much, Brian. Back to you.
And thank you, Brian. Thank you, Megan. And thank you, NASHBID. We'll move to the next slide. We're now on national initiatives. And at this point, I'd like to bring in Sarah Corcoran from Guide Consulting. Sarah?
Thank you, Brian. And there's going to be a busy end of the year, it looks like, in Congress. On this first row that we have in this slide here, we're talking about the reconciliation package that has passed the House. It is now in the Senate, and we are waiting for the Senate to take up consideration of the package. We expect that during the week of the 13th. And I think it seems like the tactic is going to be to try to limit the amount of debate over the package and how long the procedure will take by having it go right up until the Christmas break begins. So it's going to be a long few weeks left in the Senate. If they are able to pass that package out of the Senate, it will have to go back to the House. Since it will have been amended, they'll have to vote again. And if it does pass, we expect that to be in early January when the House is back in session. But it looks like there's very little chance of it wrapping up before the end of the year at this point. On the second line of the FY22 appropriations, we are coming to the end of the current continuing resolution that is keeping the government open and funded. That runs out on Friday, and there are ongoing negotiations for another short-term continuing resolution. There's some debate between the parties and between the chambers of Congress about when that might potentially end. And it looks like there is some appetite among the more conservative Republican members to at least have some sort of short shutdown of the government. But that is ongoing. We're coming up to the deadline. And the other couple things that they need to wrap up are some debt ceiling negotiations, which should be coming up soon, as well as the defense bill. So it's going to be a busy December that Congress has a lot in store, a lot to get done, not much time to get it done at this point. So we'll keep you updated, but hopefully next week we'll have some news about appropriations as well as how Build Back Better, that human infrastructure bill, is doing in the Senate.
All righty, Sarah, thank you. And thank you for that update. And we definitely will keep our eyes and ears open for these proceedings as December progresses. Can we move to the next slide, please?
Before we move on to state, Natalie with AFSP had a quick moment.
Certainly. I'm sorry.
This is Taylor from AFSP. She actually wasn't able to join today, and I checked with her and no updates on our end.
I'm sorry, Taylor. I'm actually here.
Oh,
you must
she
have,
is here.
Our messages must have gotten crossed. Oops. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I wanted to pop on and I wanted to introduce AFSP's newest Manager of Federal Policy, Joanna Rosen. She joined us on Monday. She just joined us from State Senator Brian Creighton out of Massachusetts office and is a former AFSP intern from many years ago. And so we are so happy to have her join our team after some years away. And she has been wonderful in the last 3 days. And so we're really looking forward to her coming in and working with everyone here too. So thank you, Joanna, and thank you all.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be back.
Wonderful. I don't know if you had any comments, Joanne?
Oh, it's great to be back. So thank you so much for having us here. And thank you, Natalie, for the intro.
All right. Well, thank you and welcome. Welcome back. All righty, we'll move now into the state laws and the, normally we have Laura Evans coming in from Vibrant, but my understanding she's not here today. So we're gonna ask Steph Pasternak if she would give us an update, please.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm, just fine.
Great. So I just wanted to share some good news regarding Massachusetts 988 legislative efforts. So no changes to the map, but you can see that Massachusetts has a pending 988 legislation and wanted folks to know that just before Thanksgiving, their 988 legislation was actually amended into a larger mental health package, and then it immediately passed their full Senate. That larger package, that is S2572. Its title is an act to addressing barriers to care for mental health. You might hear it referred to as the ABC 2.0 bill. So it's a wide-ranging mental health reform effort that addresses everything from parity to emergency room boarding to workforce, integrated care, and now at 988 implementation. It builds on their Mental Health ABC Act from last year, many of which some of those provisions had already been signed into law. The good news is also this bill is definitely a priority for their Senate President, Karen Spilka. And if you want to take a closer look at the Massachusetts 988 language specifically, you want to look at Amendment number 26, which defines 988 services, creates a 988 fund, including the 988 fee on telephone bills, and creates a 988 commission to oversee the implementation of 988. Another amendment of interest is Amendment number 31, which really talks about 911 and 988 interoperability and making sure that calls that are behavioral health related going into 911 are triaged appropriately to 988. And I can include a quick link to that bill so folks know what I'm talking about in the chat here. 1 second. Oh, sorry, just a quick correction from NAMI, Massachusetts. Thank you, Monica. The fee is not in the amendment, but they are actively working on that. The fund is in the amendment though. And I've included a link to the bill. And also just a quick reminder, NAMI is still hosting monthly calls for state advocates and to give updates on where state legislative efforts are. And if you are not already signed up to attend those, you can do so here. And our next call will be on next Monday, December 6th at 4 p.m. Eastern. And that is it for me.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Steph, for that very valuable information. And thanks again for posting into the chat box so we can be updated. Let's move to the next slide, please. And as we kind of move towards the end of today, I just wanted to point out that the cards that you see before you, and this one in particular with Washington State, but also the next one with Nevada, are great examples of the new information that is being shared. So you can have on one screen a kind of a bullet point for the particular states. These cards have already been developed and you see them there. There are more that are yet to come. So we're just giving you a heads up that as this information is acquired, we'll be able to share this information further with you guys. And you can see from its content, there's a lot there. And as we discussed a little earlier, you can see also the uniqueness, even in the presentation of the 988 legislation, how it does go down to each state having its own specificity. So we want to certainly thank the developers of this and hope it can be much more useful for your information. So let's move to the next slide, please. All right. I don't think it wants to show the end, but that's okay. Just want to make sure that we're all aware of what's coming ahead. We have coming up next week, Kimberly Boswell is going to be talking from the Alabama Crisis System of Care. And that'll be followed the following week on the 15th by Melinda Baldwin, who's going to present on children, adolescents, and families in crisis. And you can see on your screen there, also acknowledging the weeks off that we will have for the holidays. So lots of good material coming up within the next few weeks. We invite you all to definitively come on board, be a part of it, and we're constantly looking for additional information to be added into the new year, and we welcome any suggestions. Last slide, please. Now, this is something I watched the filming on this. I thought it was just incredible on Moving America's Soul and Suicide. And it's just a reminder that episode 3 of it is coming forth. And it's really something that I would encourage you to take a look at if you have not yet. When we mentioned in the beginning about being able to see previous episodes, please refer to that page that we talked about in order to catch up on those. So with that, everyone, I want to certainly thank you all for joining us today. It's been an incredible session, packed full of wonderful information, very supportive, very much moving forward. It's been my honor to serve you guys as a host today, and we're looking forward to next week's Crisis Jam, where we look for all of you to be a part of it. So thank you again for coming with us. Have a wonderful rest of the day, wonderful time. Take care, folks.